Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Dog Whisperer. I have a special guest on who's running for a local office in the town of Galloway Township, New Jersey. Rob Gancitano. Did I get that correctly?
You absolutely did. Very good.
Excellent. A plus for me. So you're
Indeed.
running for the town council in Galloway. And for those of my listeners who may not be familiar, Galloway is in New Jersey and it is basically a suburb of Atlantic City.
Yeah, you could say that. Absolutely. It used to be a farming community. There was a lot of farmland here. A lot of agriculture occurred in Galloway Township in the past. And now
Mhm.
the economy is kind of changing. Where the town itself is in a flux. It's in a transition, I think. And we're trying to figure out how to move past all of the agriculture into the 21st century.
Well, that's a very important issue because a lot of people will write off local elections or like off your elections, kind of like what New Jersey has now. And the point of this podcast is to stress to everyone why these local elections and these off your elections might be even more important than the national and the high profile races. So I really thank you for being on this podcast. So, what are the political demographics of Galloway Township, and how does that impact how you're going to run your campaign?
Well, I have been told that politically there are more registered Democrats here than there are Republicans. However, in an off-year election, a non-presidential year and a non-governorship year, the Democrats don't come out. So the local government is pretty much controlled solidly, I would say completely dominated by the Republicans. Right now, we have 7 seats on the council. They're all Republican. They're all straight. They all oppose a woman's right to choose. Now, you might say that that doesn't really affect us at a local level, but I think it does. Galloway has a great number of health facilities here, and even just here, not too far from where I live, someone is regularly outside of the clinic. I don't know what takes place in the clinic. I'm going to assume it's abortions and other health reproductive rights, and it creates a hostile environment for those women seeking healthcare. And that happens right across the street from the municipal building. Now, I'm not saying that this person is not entitled to their right to demonstrate or to protest this, but at the same time, we have to view this as a healthcare issue for women, and it's not a political issue. And the fact that at the local level, we can't even get to that basic understanding, I think it's a failure of imagination. It's a failure of leadership, and it's a failure of people to come together. If Democrats stay home every election except the presidential election, then
Mhm.
how can we expect our local politics to reflect our own values? You know, we have an issue here now in Galloway Township that's been going on since the last council. So I guess at the end of December. In December of last year, the council then, which had several Democrats on it, passed an ordinance to allow Grasshopper Farms to begin farming and growing cannabis in a location not in Galloway Township. And this created a great deal of consternation among the local population. What is it going to smell like? People are going to come and try and steal it. There'll be security issues. And while that it's a local issue, but it's also a national one. If we had resolved this issue at the national level, and national federalized legality in marijuana, perhaps people would be less inclined to hold these positions. I mean, those are two just basic examples I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, those issues do go hand in hand, and that's why it's so important that when people vote, they don't just vote in, as you stated, the national elections, but the local elections, because, as you stated, your town has more Democrats than Republicans. But I had Tim Alexander on my podcast last week, who's running for Congress in the district that Galloway happens to be in, and we stated, he clearly stated, and I agree with him, that a lot of times when there's low voter turnout, the representation does not actually match the entire electorate, just the ones that voted. And that's why when you vote, you have an advantage.
Absolutely. I don't want to target any one specific group, but again, the Democrats don't come out to vote in these local elections, but a great number of Republicans do.
Mm-hmm.
And they dominate the field. They dominate the local level. Like I said, 7 seats on the council. They're all Republican. They're all men. I don't see how that's representative of Galloway. Galloway's demographics mirror that of the nation. We have roughly the same amount demographically. So, the same number of white people, the same number of Black people that the nation does as a whole, on average. So the idea that somehow we shouldn't have half of the council be at least female, or at least 20% of the council be Black or African American or Hispanic or Latino. I don't see how that doesn't translate into bad policy for all of us. I grew up, I didn't grow up, but I lived in 2 towns that, well, now I lived in 3. 2 towns that had one party rule, right? So I lived in Jersey City, New Jersey up north. I lived there for 4 years, loved it, worked. I had an 11-minute commute. I worked in an office building right next to where I lived. So it was awesome. It was also terrible because I never got a snow day. But yeah, that was before remote work.
Yeah.
But
you won't have a snow day if you make it onto the council, though. You're going to be responsible for some of that. So
I absolutely know that. That's one of the things that Jersey City did really well, especially where I lived. I can't speak to the other parts of Jersey City, but when I lived there, the snow disappeared overnight like magic. They really worked really hard to get that area, which was an economic part of the economic engine of Jersey City, up and running as quickly as possible. Even after Sandy, they really worked very hard to get the electricity up and to get the infrastructure back to working in Jersey City. But that being said, that was a national issue, really, a statewide problem. Sandy was a statewide problem. The local level issues at the time were not being addressed properly because it was a totally Democratic government. And I'm a Democrat, been a Democrat my whole life. I don't think that produces great ideas. I don't think. I lived in Mount Vernon, the same in New York, Westchester, right outside of New York City, a suburb. Also run by Democrats. Not a great government. They're still trying desperately to create a better government for themselves in Mount Vernon. And I lived in Washington, D.C., also totally run by Democrats. And at the time, they were just trying to grasp back all of the corruption that the last group of Democrats had on Washington, D.C. for decades. So one party rule is a terrible idea. I mean, it creates a system of corruption and cronyism, and we can't allow that to happen at the local level. We have to make sure that, just like at the national level, we have to make sure that we have responsible political parties fighting for both their views. I've always thought that. I love that you call yourself the blue dog whisperer, that you're somewhat conservative in your approach. My in-laws would argue with you about my conservatism because they think I'm a radical Democrat, but I'm actually a conservative in a lot of my approach to things. I believe in strong fiscal responsibility. I believe that if you can't keep your financial house in order, you can't grow, you can't serve the population, you can't do very much as a community, right? So it's very important to keep that diversity in our government. Local level, national level, every level. Republicans, Democrats, we need good conservatives to exchange ideas with. And I don't think we have them right now. I think we have a lot of people who play a lot of good games. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm getting really tired of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, she's just, I mean, I don't think that any of the council members here even come close to that kind of behavior. I believe they're better men than that. But they are Trump supporters, and we know that they've attended stuff at at Bedminster last year, earlier this year. I'm not interested in having Donald Trump run Galloway. I'm not interested in Donald Trump running anything.
Well, the people in your community, and that was going to be one of my questions, but a lot of people in Atlantic City know all too well about Donald Trump's success. And for those of you who are listening to the audio recording, I use quote air quotes because
Indeed.
a lot of people in that area.
Right. Out of business. In New York City, too. I'm from Brooklyn. New York. And everybody, I remember I was a kid, like 12, 13, maybe younger, when he rescued the Woolman rink from ruin. And everybody touted him as a great developer that's going to save New York and reinvent New York. And he just turned out to be a liar. He cheated union members left and right. He cheated private companies left and right, to the point where people became insolvent. When you owe people money and it's a small business and you don't pay your bills, the economy doesn't work right, does it? The little guy gets crushed.
You're absolutely right. And I totally agree with you about how one party rule for a long period of time is just not sustainable. All you have to do is look at some of those cities that you were talking about, look at Newark or even Mississippi, that's been run by Republicans for 20 years about, and they are suffering the consequences. Those voters are being severely abused by the GOP. There was one Republican governor, pretty good, Haley Barbour, who I believe actually expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. Next governor, I believe, did not do that. So, everything in moderation, and I think that you agree with that.
I do. I think that we have to find the common ground. I have always believed, sort of like I don't know what they used to call them, but those old-timey railroad pump things where you have looked like a seesaw. One guy was on one side, the other guy was on the other, and they both worked in coordination to go down the track. Or like canoeing or kayaking, you both have to be rowing in the same general direction and in the same way to get forward, to move forward, to have progress. And the exchange between conservatives and the exchange between progressives, that always provided that push and pull, so that we moved down the track. And very leftist programs were tempered, and right extremist programs were tempered, so that they became policy that worked for everybody, or at least tried to work for most people. When Donald Trump was elected, I read a book, and the name of the author is escaping me, but he talked about maybe you read it. It was Washington's final address. I can't recall the author's name. He's a CNN host. Anyway, one of the things he talks about, we always talk about how foreign entanglements will be trouble for us. That's what Washington said. The other thing that Washington said, which I thought was prescient, and probably why this historian wrote the book, I wish I could remember his name. Washington said that extreme party politics, that lurches the country from one ideology to the next repeatedly, will tear the country apart. We will be our own worst enemy, and that the government that we create, that we tear down every 4 years, can never be effective for us. And we can't have that kind of government that it looks like Republicans really want to have. They continually try to erase the progress that we've made. We've seen it in Wisconsin, I believe, where they tried to, and was it Michigan, where they tried to tie the governor's hands by changing all the rules the last moment before they were out of power. They're not interested in power to the people. They're not interested in progress. They're just interested in holding on to power, and that frightens me.
It is very concerning because for a while the GOP appeared to be a semi-normal party, but when they lose grasp of control, they will go through very extreme measures to try to maintain power. And I could see Democrats doing similar things, but at this time, I think the Democratic Party is a more level-headed party at this time. And some would say that that's a good thing, and some would say that that's not a good thing. But I guess it's up to the voter. But I think a lot of people do like centrism to some degree, whether they realize it or not. Take a state like Massachusetts, which has been known as the most liberal state potentially, and see how many Republican governors they've had. And what I like about the Massachusetts Republican Party in the past, just like other states, is they match the candidate to the political environment. They're not going to run someone like Tommy Tuberville in Massachusetts if they really want to win. They're going to run someone like a Christie or a Charlie Baker or something like that.
Someone who's going to govern and not just espouse ideology, Governing is about ideas. Governing is not about ideology, especially at the local level, right? When you have to plow the snow, great point. When you have to pick up the trash, we don't have trash pickup here in Galloway. The homeowners in Galloway say, they don't want to pay for it, and our Republican leadership doesn't want to pay for it. I get that. I don't want more taxes. I don't love taxes. I mean, who loves taxes? No one. But taxes are necessary. And that's a problem here. We don't have trash pickup. But we do pay a tax for it because we buy it from a private corporation instead. Now, you could say that that creates jobs, but the local government should be providing certain services to the local population. And when it becomes too ideological, it can't do that.
You're absolutely correct. And I have another question regarding an issue in your town. I don't remember when this happened, but there was they created a Second Amendment sanctuary status, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to get your thoughts on that proposal, or that.
I'm sorry, say again. I only heard sanctuary.
The Second Amendment sanctuary
status. Oh, right. I'm sorry.
I need to hear your thoughts on that, because that's really controversial.
I'm going to try and speak carefully here. The Second Amendment is an important amendment. I believe that Joe Biden says it best when he says that if you think that you're going to beat the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines with your gun, you're not. So this ideology that somehow you're keeping your AK-47s, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about weapons of war. We're not talking about shotguns and pistols. We're talking about weapons that kill people at an immense rate per minute, right? So a sanctuary city for the Second Amendment. Why? We have gun ranges here. We have gun clubs. We have gun stores, I believe. I don't have any problem with those things. I'm not going to go after the people who go there and practice and, shoot stuff up and whatever. I have no issue with that. None. Hunting, as inhumane as it sounds to some people, is a necessary sport sometimes. And if you want to do that, then do it. It's not up to me to say no. But if you're holding on to your weapons of war because you think you're going to fight the American government, there's no sanctuary for that. That's treason.
Right.
We saw that. We saw that already. Right. They tried that already.
Mm-hmm. And the government has nuclear weapons. So an assault weapon is not going to do anything against that, especially with trained soldiers. And I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm not saying that the Second Amendment is outdated, because I always think that it's dangerous if the only people who have guns are people in government. So I totally respect the right of private citizens to have weapons. But let's not pretend that we're going to beat the government. You should have a shot, but you're not going to beat the government.
No. And I actually talk about this with my husband recently. It's like, I don't understand what people think is going to happen. I mean, we know that the United States government is a self-perpetuating entity, right? There'll be another head of the government someplace, hiding out someplace, dictating what happens from there. So this idea that we're going to do that, it's beyond reasonable. It's just not rational.
Right.
And the other thing is, I want to talk a little bit about elections and guns just for the moment.
Yeah.
I want to use an analogy here, right? In our country, and this is what made America great from the very beginning. You can argue that we started out with a lot of flaws, and we did. But our revolution, our overturning of government occurs at the ballot box. If you don't like something, organize and change it. Go to the ballot box and vote for the people who espouse what you're saying. But the idea that somehow the guns are going to change that, well, Michael Moore says it's always the guys with the guns who win, right? That scares me. And so I want the United States government to be strong and aware and not stick its head in the sand regarding white supremacy and the tendency of the Republican Party to embrace authoritarian ideologies. You know, we can't just say that that's not going to happen. You know, I love the way the press talks about this stuff. There isn't going to be a post-America democracy or post-democracy America. You won't be on the air. There
Right.
won't, you know, I don't know how to deliver that to people and without sounding alarmist. And at the local level, it's important to engage in your local politics because that's where it all starts. Congressmen grow up like weeds, right? They grow up from the ground up, we hope. And supporting your local government, getting involved, showing up to talk about the things that you care about at your monthly or quarterly meeting, whatever it is, and making your voice heard. And on Twitter and TikTok, it's just not enough. You've actually got to show up to the meetings, which I know the mayor is going to say that I don't do because I work on Tuesday nights, although I won't be working any further. I teach voice each Tuesday, but I've changed my schedule so that I can, from going forward, attend all of the council meetings on Tuesday evenings. We had a moment at the Beef and Beer at the Smithville Inn where he thought he got a zinger in me because he said he hadn't seen me at the meetings. And I said, that's okay. I watch them online. They're on GTV. So
Yeah.
if you can't make a council meeting like I can't, go online and watch it.
It's a great.
I put it in, I had stuff to do. I put it on, I put my pods in and I was doing my stuff all around. I listened to every single one of them that way because, you know, you can still know what's going on at your local level. You can still participate.
Absolutely, and that's a great resource we have. So they're posted online, posted to the local channel. What are your plans after you win your race? What do you want to do for your community?
Well, I do want to restore a little bit of financial, I don't want to say integrity because I don't like accusing people of doing things that there is no proof of. So I'm not going to do that and I'm not even going to intimate that. But I do want to see more transparency. I don't recall a discussion openly about building a paddleboard court, and that's what we did. Although, you know, there aren't any real usable, as far as I know, maybe they're open now, restrooms for children who use the playground nearby and people who use the paddleboard court nearby. So I would think that we could be more responsive to what people need in that regard. People were crying about not crying, they were crying that they had no issue. Their babies were crying because they had nowhere to go to the bathroom. They literally had to take them to several, I don't know, about 2,000 feet away to the library, and a couple of them didn't make it. You know, they're little kids, so that's a problem. But what I want to do is I want to bring Stockton into our midst more. Stockton University is a great resource. They're a great resource for climate change research. There is a new program that just started recently where seniors can take classes at an audit level at Stockton. I want to try and create mentorships and guidance programs for career paths with the seniors who tend to stick to their own communities. I want to try to draw them out. I want them, Stockton and the senior communities, to be a greater part of Galloway. So I want to address the fact that nobody's talking to them. You know, right now, there's a lot of talk between Galloway and I say Galloway Town Council or government and Stockton about various housekeeping issues, but nobody's really planning how to use the resources to reach a wider community here in Galloway. I would like to see more planned recreation for the youth. I know we have some programs, but I think there's no central location for us in Galloway to have our our youth being in a productive situation, especially during the summertime. So I would like to see some of that happen. Again, I want to understand why we're not following the master plan from the New Jersey Department of State rather, that has money and grants for us to build bike pathways and walkways and for more accessibility to public transit. There is, which is my wheelhouse, the long planned but never delivered New Jersey train transit hub for Galloway to Atlantic City and points west to Philly has been talked about forever, but never ever moved past talking. Maybe it's time to move past talking. We can work with the state, we can work with the feds to create that station that, quite honestly, a lot of our working folk need to get to work, both, and would help us expand our commercial base a little bit more. I want to see infill development, which, if you don't know what that is basically taking derelict buildings or abandoned buildings, abandoned development sites, and using those sites first before opening up new areas for infrastructure development, so that existing sewer lines, existing water lines, existing electric lines are used in place to so that we can avoid urban, more suburban sprawl, taking away the green spaces, taking away the natural beauty of the area, and endangering more of the environment. So it's just a couple of the things that I've been thinking about.
Well, they're well thought out, and I've been to Galloway many times, and people sometimes don't realize that it is a college town. So utilizing Stockton University is super important. You know, a lot of times when there is an event in Atlantic County or even in the congressional district that it's in, the events will take place not in Atlantic City, which everyone's familiar with, but at Stockton. So you're absolutely correct.
Right. I mean, Stockton is a gorgeous campus.
It
I mean,
is.
it's
It looks like a
really
sleepaway camp.
beautiful.
It looks
I
like a
mean,
sleepaway camp.
it, it's just but a lot of, you know, that be when, I don't want to contradict what you said, I'm sure, but a lot of Stockton's development is taking place in Atlantic City, and I don't begrudge Atlantic City that resource, but I want to see it here in Galloway, of
Yep.
course. You know, I want to see that take place here more. um so yeah, I mean, I when I first moved to Galloway a few years ago, I explored going back to school briefly um, at Stockton. I was so pleased to have such, what I believe is a world-class university so close to us right here in our community.
It's a great school. South Jersey's got a lot of good schools: Rutgers, Camden, Rowan, Stockton. So absolutely correct. And we have a lot of
Mm.
resources that people in other parts of the state don't know about or don't care to know about. I don't know, but South Jersey's got a lot to offer. So I really appreciate you running to try to make a difference. What do you love most about your community, or even just what are some of the things that you love a lot about your community? I don't want to make this a contest, but what do you love about Galloway?
I like nature. Um, I I'm from Brooklyn. You know, to me, we moved to the country when we moved 2 blocks away and we had a backyard. I was very young. I thought, you know, there's grass, there's a tree, that's the country. But having really lived most of my life in urban areas, I enjoy the green. I love going outside and seeing all the green. I love that when the wind is right, I can smell the ocean. I love that. Um, Tell a quick story. When we were looking at houses and we were going to be moving down here, I actually fell in love with the house that I'm sitting in right now. It was the first house we saw. So naturally, nobody ever wants to buy the first house they saw, right? So we continued to look, but I really liked this house. And so on the second day that we came back, I opened up the back door and I walked out into the yard, and it's kind of a big yard. It's the biggest yard I've ever had, and it's a nice flat yard. It's got a swimming pool and a cute shed and stuff. And it was just this automatic reaction. I just exhaled. It was sort of, it was visceral or primal or whatever. I just went, and I thought, okay, I could live here. This is going to be nice.
Yeah.
You know, I can walk to, I mean, not everybody has this privilege, but I can walk to town center. We walk to pay our taxes all the time. I can walk to the ShopRite. It's dangerous. I can also walk to the Dunkin' Donuts. You know, I like that. I like walkability. I like the green. I like the people of Galloway. My neighbors are great. I love them. I have two wonderful neighbors. I have one neighbor who, when she's mowing her yard, she just continues to mow on my side. So she just keeps going because it's not that much. So she just finishes off that side for me. My other neighbor has become really a good friend of ours, and she's going to loan me some electricity for my fundraiser next weekend. So yeah, I mean, I dig it. There are chickens across the street. They come, they eat the bugs on my lawn. I think that's awesome. It's just a wonderful place to live.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. I love living in South Jersey. I didn't live in Galloway, but I loved it. So I totally hear you, and I love visiting that area. What I know this may be a silly question, but what are the differences or some of the differences between yourself and your Republican opponent?
Well, I am a Democrat, and this gives me a good segue into the difference between Democrats and Republicans, right? So Democrats believe in democracy, one vote, one person, right? We all get a vote. And that's how our ideology that's how our ideology plays out, right? There's a joke that being a Democratic leader is like trying to herd cats. And it's kind of like that. Trust me, I'm a Democratic leader now, and everybody has an opinion and they're all different. And that's great. That's what I love about the Democrats, right? We are the big tent, even though they claim to be. We're the big tent. So that is certainly one of the things that separates me. But a Republican is different because they don't have direct representation. I elect you to go and do stuff in government for me, right? That we have a republic here. We don't have a democracy. Everybody thinks we're a democracy, and we are because we elect our leaders democratically. But we are a republic, which means we elect Congress people, we hire them for this job, and then they do it for us. We don't have direct representation. We don't say yes to every single thing like a referendum. And that just creates a difference in the ideology of government, I think. Republicans are one step separated from their relationship to government. They think government is an impediment, whereas Democrats think government is a tool to be used to improve people's lives. I think that separates my ideology out from all the Republicans, I believe. I am openly gay and unapologetically openly gay. I support a woman's right to choose. I support gender non-conforming communities and their right to not only existence but self-determination. I believe that the United States has a responsibility around the world to be a leader, especially in what's taking place in Ukraine. I think that the main difference is I want to use the tools of government to help the people of Galloway.
Well, government is a tool, and I have a problem with a lot of Republicans who say government is the problem and don't mind being a part of the problem. Government can be used responsibly or it could be used irresponsibly. It's a knife, basically. You got to know how to use it properly, and I really appreciate your explanation. And before we sign off, do you have anything that you want to tell my listeners? Any Facebook page, any website that they can go to find out more information about your run for the council?
Thanks so much, Evan. Yeah, www.rob, the number 4 Galloway. So ROB, the number 4 Galloway.com, and Rob for Galloway on Facebook and Act Blue. So I'm out there. So I need volunteers. I need all the help I can get. If you're interested in helping me out, please drop me an email at rob4galloway@gmail.com.
All right. Well, sounds good. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. We really loved having you.
Thanks so much, Evan. This was a real pleasure. I really appreciate you doing this for me.
Absolutely. And good luck on the race.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.